Hey guys, it's Shaylin and I'm here today with another writing video. I feel like every year I need to do at least one video on NaNoWriMo, but after this video, I think I will have exhausted it all. I don't know if I'll have much else to say because today I'm bringing you just every single NaNoWriMo tip that I have. So if you're like, what is this funky weird word? I'm new to the writing community and that doesn't sound like a word. NaNoWriMo is an abbreviation for National Novel Writing Month. It's also international, so that might cause confusion. It's basically just a challenge that is very popular in the writing community. It started years and years ago, and basically the challenge is just to challenge yourself to write 50,000 words in a month. I did NaNoWriMo every single year when I was in high school, and I loved it. And then I took some time off from Nano because I was in university. I recently came back to doing NaNoWriMo last year with a bit of a new perspective on it. I've kind of just changed how I view NaNoWriMo, and I don't really aim to write 50,000 words in a month anymore. It's not possible or productive for me, but I still do like participating. Last year I did NaNoWriMo with the goal to lose. It was my whole thing. This year I'm like semi-participating. Honestly, it is the worst timing for me to be doing NaNoWriMo because I don't really have a project that it would be productive or possible for me to write every single day for a month. So I'm just doing a write every day challenge. So I have 20 NaNoWriMo tips. I know that not all of these will apply to everyone. Like, there are tips in here that are more for people who are maybe really challenging themselves to write 50,000 words, and there are others that are more like self-care and about like, you know, making NaNoWriMo work for you. So not all of these will necessarily apply to everyone. Take what you will. Which brings us to my first tip, which is make it your own. Have fun. Don't put yourself under unnecessary amounts of stress, you know? NaNoWriMo can be a little stressful, but it should kind of be stressful in a good way. If it's stressful in like a harmful way, then maybe you want to adjust and find a different way to approach it. This is a personal challenge for your personal benefit. And so if the regular constraint of NaNoWriMo, which is write 50,000 words in a month, doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for me anymore, then don't do it. But you can still participate and make it your own. So I'll leave a link to a video that I did on NaNoWriMo alternatives with some different ways to make NaNoWriMo your own. But really just like do whatever would work for you. Last year, my challenge was write every day but I had no word count. So I just removed the word count aspect and it was great. November was the best month of my 2020. Low bar. It removed all the stress of having to hit a word count, and instead I just got really immersed in my project. I had a ton of fun and I ended up writing way more than I was expecting. I wrote over 30,000 words, which is like double what I was expecting to write. Of course, if you want to challenge yourself to do the 50,000 words, that's amazing. If you're like 50,000 words, that ain't nothing. 100K baby, let's go. Do whatever would work for you based on your current situation, life circumstance, project, and also your writing style. You know, it's a pretty hectic time for me right now because I'm applying to grad school, and so I really don't have time to be doing a regular NaNoWriMo. So I'm just challenging myself to write every day. If it's one sentence, then it's one sentence. Which brings me to my second tip, which is try to, at the very least, write every day, even if it's just a sentence. You know, I think that one of the best parts of NaNoWriMo is that it helps you build up momentum, and I think there are two things that contribute to that. First of all is the community aspect. There's this excitement. Everyone's talking about it, which is one thing I love about NaNoWriMo, and it's one thing that really motivates me. And the other thing is the consistency, just really challenging yourself to write every single day. I talked about in a video that I did last year after NaNoWriMo, I did a video reflecting on writing every day and the benefits and pros and cons I found from that. And one thing that I found was that when my challenge was to write every day, it kind of made it easier to write because I never spent any time throughout the day being like, I wonder if I'm gonna write today, like, gotta hype myself up, you know? Like, I love writing. Writing's like my favorite thing to do. But when you're tired, it can take a bit of effort to like really hype yourself up to write. But if you know you're gonna write, like there's no question in your mind, it makes it easier, honestly, to just start writing. And so I think that if you can just build up momentum, one of the best ways to do that is to just not take a day off, even if it's literally one sentence. Like, if you're like, oh, it's like you're just going to sleep, you're super tired, you're like, man, I didn't write today, write like 2 words and then log off, that's fine. You'll keep up that momentum even on days where maybe it's not feasible for you to write that much. My third tip is one of my favorite NaNoWriMo tips, and it's to break your writing into multiple sessions. So outside of NaNoWriMo, I usually just write in one writing session. I don't usually write multiple times in a day, but in NaNoWriMo, I do think that because there's a bit more of a productivity focus a lot of the time, I do think it can help to write in multiple sessions. And part of that, I think, is trying to have your first writing session earlier in the day. I'm very much an afternoon, evening writer. You can write a little bit, say, in the morning, just like 5 minutes. Again, it could be a couple sentences. It makes it a lot easier to open the document later on, and you've kind of already just kickstarted your writing for that day, so it just makes it easier to jump into. Maybe if you like work and so you don't really have the choice but to write in the evenings after work, but you find it a little hard, like, man, after work now I have to write, like, tired. I get it. One thing that can help is to try to write 1 or 2 sentences or a paragraph before you go to work in the morning or when you're on your lunch break. Tip number 4 is to write before doing any kind of like wind down tasks or relaxing tasks like watching TV. You know, I don't know about you, but usually in the evenings I watch a show. Or if it's just like kind of like hanging around on YouTube, Twitter, whatever, TikTok, I don't know. These things that you typically do to just like relax your brain because they don't really require effort, I would recommend trying to write before doing those things. There's a certain energy slump that comes from doing things like watching TV or spending time on social media that it's hard to pull yourself back out of. Usually it's hard to write immediately after work because I need a little bit to rest, so I like to like take a bit to rest. I find going for a walk is good because I don't get into like a brain energy slump, but I still get out of work mode. Reading is also a really good one because it's more active, and then write. But if you watch a show, go on TikTok, whatever, and then you try to write, it's gonna be a lot harder because now your brain's logged off. Your brain is in, I'm not working, I'm not thinking mode, I'm just enjoying my show. To have to then go, no, we're creating now, is quite a bit harder. Once you give your brain the chance to like log off for the day, it can be kind of hard to reboot it. Number 5, minimize the effort that it takes to write. I don't know about you, but a lot of the time it takes seemingly much more effort to start writing than to actually write. One thing that's really helpful is if you can just minimize that energy. So if you feel like you need a big whatever amount of energy to start writing and then you can actually write, try to minimize that. So whatever it is that you find gets in your way, try to get rid of it. Sometimes it's extremely small things. One thing that I find really helpful is just instead of saving my document in like a writing folder, just save it on my desktop so it's always right there. It's like, oh, my novel's right there. I can open it with one click. Feels like it minimizes the amount of effort it takes to start writing. If there's anything that you feel like is taking just extra incremental amounts of energy, get rid of them. Make it easier, you know? Hack your life. So number 6 is to try to clear any other tasks from your to-do list that you can clear. I don't know about you, but my to-do list has many to's that I haven't done. It's like clean this thing, organize this thing, mail this thing, do this errand, make this appointment, make this phone call. It never ends, man. Try to just get through them. Like, make that phone call that you've been putting off for a month that will literally take 5 minutes. Because then it's just not on your mind during NaNoWriMo. You can just focus on writing. You can have a clear mind. You won't have all these random little things cluttering up your brain because at the back of your mind you know you have to do that and you just keep not doing it. Maybe it's just me. That's what my life tends to be like. Step 7 is to try and set aside time for brainstorming and reflecting. Writing is not just about actually sitting down and writing. So much of writing happens when you're away from your computer and you're thinking. You need that time to refill the creative batteries by thinking, reflecting, in order to have material and energy to write. And so one thing that can happen in something like NaNoWriMo is you deplete all that creative battery and then you have nothing to draw on. So try to set aside time for brainstorming. So for me, that's going for a walk. I like to go for a walk every single day and pop in my writing playlist. And that's like my designated brainstorming time for the day. Sometimes I just like sit on my balcony and listen to music. Actually set aside time to recharge that creative battery. Reading is a big one for me. Reading stuff that inspires you. That's equally important as the actual writing. You can't really force brainstorming. You kind of just have to give yourself time to think. And some days you won't have any brilliant ideas, and some days you'll have 20 of them. You might get burned out and really drained later in the month if you don't give yourself that time to reflect and think. Step number 8 is to make a nice work environment. I know that I'm kind of a messy person. I also get very distracted and a little background stressed if I'm surrounded by mess. See, this is a paradox of my life, is that I'm very messy, but when I'm surrounded by mess, It's like a little annoying background noise. It's like, Before NaNoWriMo, just like do a little clean, a little tidy, at least for me, because I'm very messy. So for me, that's keeping it clean, but also just like make it a pleasant work environment. My biggest tip for making a nice writing environment, invest in one cool lamp. That's all you need, you know? We're here for our second pandemic NaNoWriMo, so probably gonna be writing at your house. Just do what you can to make that environment an environment that like encourages you to write and isn't causing you extra stress. And yes, this is a call out at me for being messy. Tip number 9 is to just like surround yourself with your project. You know, don't worry about being cringy. Be the fandom you wish your book had. I mean, I didn't do Preptober this year. You think I planned things? I really didn't. I put more time and effort into planning my multiple Halloween costumes than doing any prep for NaNoWriMo. But when I used to do Preptober and actually like take it seriously, I would always start listening to my writing playlist for the project like throughout October to really get in the mindset. Music is a really important part of my writing process, which is why it's coming up a lot in this video, because I listen to music at every stage of writing a project. For me, music is like a cue. When I hear a song that I associate with a certain project, it immediately pulls me into that world. And it immediately makes me think about it, and I kind of feel like I'm there and in it. I like to kind of just like maybe focus a little more on listening to that playlist that I associate with this project. Reread books or rewatch shows that initially inspired your book. Change your phone or laptop background to a picture that inspires your book or a cover that you made or whatnot. Like, just like immerse, you know? Some might say, Shaylin, that's pointless and somewhat cringy, but be free. Part of the fun of NaNoWriMo is just getting to invest fully in something that you're writing. That's why I had so much fun doing NaNoWriMo last year, is I felt like I was just so immersed in my book. Do whatever that takes to like really immerse in your book. Tip number 10 is to just brainstorm at the beginning of the month. I mean, obviously, like, we're getting down to the wire. I'm literally filming this on the 27th, so foresight? Didn't have any. Brainstorm possibilities, take notes, whatever. Organize your notes. If, like me, your notes are a mess. This whole video is just me revealing that I'm a super messy, disastrous person, I guess. Organize your notes, whatever, just so that you can easily have material to draw on. For me, as a discovery writer, I typically don't make an outline, but I do take notes because I don't trust myself to remember things. So when I get an idea, I always write it down. So at the start of NaNoWriMo, I find it's helpful to just like take all the notes that are just a mess on my phone in the notes app and actually like organize them in a document, just so that if I get stuck on the project, it's easy to have material to draw from. I can open up my notes and be like, oh wait, I was thinking of maybe doing this, or oh, maybe it would be the time to incorporate this. Just like do almost like a free write brainstorm, so that if you get stuck, you have like a bit of a well of inspiration that you can draw from. It's not like you're making it necessarily an out. I mean, look, let's be real. If you're an outliner, you've probably done that already. I know you all outliners, and you guys have this thing called foresight, and you're organized. And so I'm guessing that you're not making your outline on this, the 29th of October, 2021. You've probably started and probably finished your outline already. And all I can say is good for you. Some of us are disasters, okay? I'm talking to the everyman, the chaotic people with this tip, not those of you who have your shit together. I'm very happy for you that you have your shit together, but some of us don't, okay? But just like free write any possible ideas, and if you get stuck, you have that document that you can go back and look at. And do that now while your creative energy is probably a lot fuller. Whenever I say creative energy, I feel like some weird like spiritual astrology mom, you know, who's like, ooh, I really found myself, I went to Bali, have you tried meditating? Every time I say creative energy, I feel like one of those people. Those people probably don't believe in vaccines. I don't know what else to call it. Your creative battery. I think it's a real thing. You can be creatively exhausted, and at the start of the month, you probably have like a pretty full creative energy, and it's probably going to deplete as the month goes on because you're probably writing at maybe a higher output than you normally do. It helps to do that brainstorming and gather that material now while you have the energy and the idea is fresh and you're excited to write, rather than having to try and pull and create that material halfway through the month when you get stuck. Tip number 11, if you get stuck, Occam's razor your way through it. Solve the problem as simply and quickly as possible, even if it's a stupid solution, even if it makes no sense, and just keep going. NaNoWriMo is so much about keeping up momentum, and one of the beautiful aspects of NaNoWriMo is that that momentum can help you get through parts of your book that otherwise you could get stuck on for weeks, right? This is something I found last year when I was doing NaNoWriMo. I would get to a scene and I would get stuck, and on a regular month when I wasn't writing every day, I would just get stuck, and I would probably not feel excited to write the book because I'm stuck, and it would just turn into like a bigger mess for the next 2 weeks until I finally got through it, and it would probably be kind of difficult. But during NaNoWriMo, when I had that momentum and I was just writing every day, I'd get to a problem and just be like, okay, I'll just do this, and I would just kind of breeze over it. Sometimes I had to go back and fix that stuff later. Sometimes the solution I came up with was pretty dumb. Better to just have like a dumb little section of your book that you know is kind of ridiculous and needs to be fixed, but you're still writing, then just get stuck on that thing forever. Write the scene as badly as you can. You will get momentum again because you're gonna get through that difficult section and you'll get to a section of the book that feels easier to write again. You can always come back to it. Tip number 12 is just don't forget the basics. Your character's goals, the conflict and stakes, your character's arc, any thematic arcs. These basic things that are fueling your story, because a lot of the time when you get stuck, it's an issue with one of those things. Your character isn't really actively pursuing their goal, and so the plot is stuck. The stakes have dropped, and so the plot is stuck. There's not enough conflict, and so the plot gets stuck. A lot of the time when you get into the middle section of your book, it's easy to lose track of these things, and that's how you write yourself into a corner, right? So if you write yourself into a corner, just like take a step back and be like, okay, what am I just trying to do with this book? Like, what's my character's goal again? Oh, right, okay, this is their goal, so that's what they should be doing. Tip number 13 is explore your character's backstory if you need a change. If you feel like you're getting a little stagnant and you need a change, then write a couple flashbacks. You know, you may cut them from the book later, you may relocate them to a place that makes more sense. Sometimes it can be really refreshing to stop and just like take a dive into your character's backstory. But if you're stagnating, I find that's a really good way to get unstuck. Tip number 14 is to be intentional now because it'll make the writing easier later. I think one of the biggest criticisms of NaNoWriMo, and potentially a way that it could be counterproductive, is if you get so focused only on the word count that you just completely forget about the fact that you're writing a book that you want to make good. You know, and for some people, just writing a really chaotic first draft that they then can remold is how they like to write. Even though the goal is to write a lot and write a lot quickly, if you're not being intentional with what you're writing, the writing will get harder the deeper you get into the book. If you're writing unintentionally and you're not thinking about the scenes you're using to construct your plot, you're not building the plot in an intentional way where it's moving forward, where it has momentum, where there are goals and conflict and all those basic building blocks like I was just talking about, you're gonna get to a point in the story where you don't really have a story. It's gonna be so muddled and messy that there's not gonna be an easy way forward. So it can be really easy to write a ton at the beginning very unintentionally. It's only gonna make it harder later in the month and later on in the draft. When you get past the beginning and the first act, where you've already set everything up and now the story needs to flow and evolve based on the pieces you've set up and their natural momentum, you want those things to have all been set up intentionally so you can kind of just let it go. Tip number 15 is see if you can pick a few days to be like your writing days, your marathon writing days. This is really a tip if your goal is to win or produce a lot of words. 2, 3, 4, maybe days throughout the month where your goal is going to be to write a ton. I can't set that word count for you. It depends on what's a lot for you. Maybe if you have friends doing NaNoWriMo, you can make a thing out of it. My 16th tip is also for those who are really aiming for a word count goal. If you fall behind, divide that remaining word count over the remaining days rather than just trying to play catch up the next day. Like if you get 1,000 words behind, don't think, oh man, well tomorrow I have to write 2,600 words because I only wrote 600 today. Instead, take that 1,000 words and divide it over the remaining days. I think that NaNoWriMo, the website, does that for you automatically, where it adjusts your word count based on how much you've currently written. I think that that's just easier than feeling like you have to play catch up in just one day. And just don't stress too much about falling behind one day. It leads to my 17th tip, which is if you fall behind, instead of giving up, just make new goals. Let's say it's halfway through NaNoWriMo and your goal was to write 50,000 words and you realize there's no way it's gonna happen. I'm so far behind, it would be impossible. I'll just give up. Don't give up. Stop and make a new goal. Maybe you wanna set a new word count goal. Maybe you're like, okay, there's no way I'm gonna write 50,000 words, but maybe I can hit 30,000. Maybe your goal isn't going to be to hit a word count. Maybe you just want to be like, okay, I'm just going to try to write every single day for the rest of the month. Maybe you're like, okay, so I wrote the first 20,000 words of my book, but it's a mess and I've realized I want to change a bunch of stuff. Maybe for the second half of the month, your goal is going to be to revise or rewrite that first section because you just feel like it would be a better use of your time. It's okay to change course and reevaluate. Just because you set a goal doesn't mean that you're married to that goal and you die if you fail. This isn't Squid Game. It's okay. At the end of the month, you'll probably feel a lot better if you adjusted your goal and then you were able to achieve that goal than if you just gave up entirely. I mean, obviously, if it's really being bad for you, then yeah, give up. Like, you can totally bail if that would be the best thing for you. You don't have to write 50,000 words for NaNoWriMo to be a success, and you don't have to reach the goal that you initially set out to reach for NaNoWriMo to be a success. Sometimes when you start writing, especially if you're starting from the beginning of a new project, you can be hit with a couple surprises. Tip number 18 is if you're feeling stagnant, switch it up. Change your writing environment. This can be as small as changing the room you write in. There are word processors that are like FAQS aesthetic word processors, you know, background looks like a mountain, or you can set your own background or whatever, something that maybe fits your project. Something like that can just give the illusion of a new writing environment. Just see what you can change to get out of that slump. Just anything to get out of this repetitive sense of the same, because that is what causes burnout. Number 19 is to keep track of your planned future edits. That is the motto of NaNoWriMo, turn off your internal editor, right? While you're writing, you'll feel like you kind of have that reassurance that when this draft is done, you know what you gotta do. And if you're the kind of person who usually likes to edit as you write, it can kind of help temper that need to edit as you write. And finally, if you have momentum, carry it beyond the end of November. It's not like when you build up writing momentum for NaNoWriMo, it will last exactly 30 days. For some of us, that writing momentum might start to end before the end of the month. That's what happened to me last NaNoWriMo. But for some people, you might get in a really great writing groove and you might get to the end of the month and be like, I am still going strong. Keep going. Momentum can be hard to build up. And so if you have it, try to let it run its course. Don't just stop because it's the end of November. Obviously, don't keep writing that book. If you feel tired, if you need a break, take a break. I think that one of the best things about NaNoWriMo, like I've said a few times through this video, is that it helps you build up momentum. Don't feel like you have to end that in November. I would love to hear what your NaNoWriMo plans are for this year. Are you participating? Are you modifying the rules? Are you breaking the rules? Are you following the rules? What's your word count goal? What are your other goals? What are you writing? I don't know. I want all of the details. Or if you're not doing anything for NaNoWriMo, then I want to know what your Halloween costume is. For my first Halloween costume, I'm going as Klaus from the Umbrella Academy in season 2 when he was a cult leader. And then my other Halloween costume, my friend is having a fancy ghoul Halloween party. So I'm going as a fancy ghost. I have a full white suit, which I'm extremely excited about. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can always send me an ask on Tumblr, and I'll see you in another video.